Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you all are, and I really appreciate you taking the time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrea Miller. I'm a leadership and performance coach. I've lived and worked on 3 continents and work with clients in over 50 countries. And like most of you, I've had my share of challenges and have really had to think about the topic of resilience because things have not always been easy. And I think during these uncertain times, it's such an important topic because we get some of it wrong, and that's really to our detriment. And I had this incredible epiphany at the gym last week. I've spent the summer in Chicago, and I decided to work with a personal trainer because I didn't know my way around the gym. And part of my resilience strategy, part of what resilience means to me, because I've had these personal challenges, is taking care of myself. So while I was at the gym, I had this realization that strength isn't exactly what we think it is. I looked at myself there, having done this for the last couple of months, and was just giving myself a moment of credit, which is not something I do easily, a moment of recognition, because about 8 years ago, I could barely get out of bed. About 8 years ago, I was still recovering from getting hit by a car and had about a year-long recovery process. I have 8 screws in my neck. It was long, it was brutal, and it was my 3rd surgery in 5 years, and I didn't know if I was gonna make it. And so when I looked at myself there and thought, "Okay, it's been a rough number of years, and I'm still showing up." And that is what resilience is about. We have this idea that it's about bouncing back quickly, and I love the definition that Adam Grant uses, the organizational psychologist. He talks about our ability to fully recover. And full recovery, is just getting back to who you are, who you are at your best, and really understanding what that takes and how to get there, and recognizing that the path is not always going to be an even one. And that's something I've learned over time. So I'm lying in this bed thinking, I don't want to get up. And then I'm like, well, this is not how I want to live. So I decided to take action. And, this has been my kind of modus operandi for a while, but particularly since all of these things happened to me in this kind of short period of time. So I wound up, going to Nicaragua, as one does, or as I do, and doing a yoga detox and kind of getting myself back on a path where I was able to really be more like myself. I have way too much metal in my body to ever be fully like myself as I was before, but more the person I wanted to be. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to help you and your teams really show up as your best self right now, whatever that looks like for you. So please forgive me. I have my notes here because I do forget. And resilience, for leaders in particular, managers and directors like yourself, it's a multi-pronged effort. The way you show up isn't only for yourself. It's like that saying, that terrible saying, only terrible because we say it so much, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself. Well, the behavior you model, the behavior you exhibit at work is the behavior your team is seeing and how they're thinking they have to show up. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today too is what you need to do so you can be the person they need you to be. And that doesn't necessarily mean being strong in the typical sense. I come from a family of Stoics, and I thought I had to do it all myself. And the most valuable lesson I've learned in this process of physical and emotional and mental recovery, is that we all need help. And learning to ask for the right help is such a critical part of it. And so when you do when we think about resilience, one of the things I recommend to do is doing a resilience audit. So to really start thinking about, those key stress points and how to manage that, and also your resources and the risk areas. And it's almost like your own risk mitigation strategy for resilience, as it were. There are some things that we can manage that we can avoid. Like my going to the gym means that I'm going to have less problems later on. I'm going to be able to walk more freely. I'm going to be able to manage my physical pain better because I'm taking better care of myself. That's part of my strategy. But for some of you, it's recognizing the things that kind of could set you off, the things that can make things worse. And how do we manage those things in our life? How do we manage those things in our work? And what does that look like? So one of the things I do talk to people about is really their network. And it's not the network that we talk about in the traditional sense necessarily. Networking has gotten a bad rap, and I think we need to reframe it and rethink it, particularly in today's times. The relationships we have in our life, the work relationships, the personal relationships, they are our resilience foundation, along with the other foundational elements for your health. There are certain things that you can manage to make sure you're showing up the way you want to show up as often as possible, recognizing that every now and then, 96 Lexus, I think it was, will come and knock you down, and then you have to rethink your strategy. And that's just a reality. Well, hopefully not your reality. It's not a good reality. I didn't particularly like it. But this is what we need to be thinking about, the things that we can manage, the things that we can take care of. How do we ensure we're getting them right? How do we have the things in place that we need to have in place? And a big piece of that is the network. So we want to make sure we have mentors that really can be there for us to help us find our way. People have gone through things before. One of the things that I like to talk about too, that I think is underutilized and undervalued, is peer networks, the peer-to-peer uh, relationships. And particularly today, when connection is really at a weak point in a lot of organizations and for a lot of people, the more we can actually get people working together. Even though it's bad for my business as a coach, I think peer-to-peer coaching is really a wonderful thing. And if you have an interest in that, I would Google that and Marshall Goldsmith. He has a really excellent guide. And it's just a way to get people to have accountability and to learn a new skill and to connect a little more deeply at work. So just something to consider. Another piece of the network is a coach like me. And then you want other experts within that process to make sure you're getting the support you need to show up as your best and be as resilient as possible at work during these really, really uncertain times. And the other piece of all this, so, you have the network, but it's easy to put it aside. It's easy to lose track of it. But the good and the bad of AI is it makes it so much easier to actually do that. One of the things I'm planning to do in the next few weeks is to take an agentic class to start automating things. But there are ways to automate reaching out to people. And that's just the superficial level. You don't want it taking over your life. You want to make sure that there is that human piece. So keep the baseline, but make sure you're going deeper at times and in just engaging actively with the people in your network. Because again, foundational, you want to make sure that you have these relationships strong because you never know what things are going to happen. I am a testament to that. And the last piece of it is giving back, which is why I love doing these LinkedIn Lives, particularly about topics that are meaningful to me. The other piece of this too, and I think this is really critical in the workplace for your teams, for developing stronger teams, is vulnerability. I can tell you when I first went on my, well, after I had all my surgeries and at the same time lost both my parents, I didn't like to talk about this stuff. It was way too personal for me, and I just didn't like to share it. It just felt like it was mine and nobody else needed to know it. And then at a certain point, I realized that sometimes it actually is helpful to start talking about these things, to be a little bit more vulnerable about it, not only for myself and my own mental health, but for others so that they know that it's okay to talk about it. And I like to call this strategic vulnerability because sometimes people overshare. And there is that fine line between oversharing because not everybody wants to hear it. Something I found out, I went through a lot and not everybody felt comfortable when I go into it in a little more detail. It can be upsetting. And that's the thing that you have to be careful about when you're sharing your personal whatever. At work, you want to make sure you're doing it in a way that's respectful and professional, and so be strategic about it. But as a leader, it is also important to say at times, you know, I'm having a bad day. You know, things are going on in my life and I'm just having a bad day because we all have them and everyone needs to know that it's okay to have them. Um, but one of the things I'm also very conscious of, and I became very conscious of, just a strategy of mine to manage the bad days, because as I found out while I was lying in that bed, is too many bad days can become a problem. And I just try to contain that to a certain amount and really try to take action. But you want to be supportive when people come to you in those times. And you want to be able to share so that they know that it's okay to share. And also, you want to make sure that you're getting your assumptions challenged, because sometimes we think that something is a certain way and we're wrong. And one way to become more resilient is to really know we're on the right path, we're doing the right things, and we can get way too into our own story, our own narrative, and not recognize when we're not doing the best things for ourselves and our journey and our mission, whether it's personal or professional. So it's really important to have those assumptions challenged, to be talking to people, to be asking people, to be getting feedback. This is such a critical part of resilience. And it's so easy when things are difficult to retreat and just really want to do it yourself and manage it and say, I've got this. The problem is you don't know if you do. So you really, at times, really want to get some outside opinions, but making sure that they're trusted opinions so that you're getting the right advice. It's not good enough for people to tell you that it's okay or it'll get better. You know, how do you get better? What do you need? And how do you get there? And again, incredibly helpful to have mentors, coaches, peers to support you throughout that process so that you're taking the right actions, building that resiliency, and having a way through and not getting stuck on certain things. One of the other pieces in terms of all of this is resilience in the workplace in particular is to encourage a bit of experimentation. Um, Particularly when we're talking about in the workplace with others and modeling this behavior, you want to make sure that there is a level of psychological safety within the workplace, that people know it's okay to take chances, and that if it doesn't go well, that they'll have your support bouncing back, that they will be okay. And again, going back to the importance of having others helping you, knowing that it'll be okay, knowing that you have others to support you. I can go back to my own experience when I got hit by the car and had this emergency surgery. And it was a very, very big surgery. And I wasn't thinking clearly. And my sister said to me that, I had to come stay with them because I wasn't thinking clearly and I just wasn't gonna be able to walk up those 4 flights of stairs, and she's just like, "Are you crazy?" So sometimes we need people to tell us when we're a little off base, and we need that support group and that support team to, make sure that we're going in the right direction, whether it be personal or work. We need to know we're doing the right things, and we need to know that there are people there who will help us when we're not. And I think it's so critical. And the more you're able to create that kind of culture in your office and in your personal life with your network, it is just so helpful during the difficult times, knowing that you have that support. I feel blessed to have that with my family and my friends. And I know that that's not the case for everyone. So to develop it in whatever way works for you is critical, to know the resources, even knowing to go to my colleague, friend in Nicaragua. I just happened to have met her years before, and I just thought, this is what I need to do now. It's important to know what resources are available to you and to the people you work with so that everybody is able to show up at their best and to recover fully. Again, going back to that definition of resilience, that isn't about bouncing back quickly, it's about bouncing back at your own pace but getting there, making sure you're able to get there, and having that network of support and safety so that you can. And resilience, I've been putting it in the context of myself and my own kind of physical emergencies, but it also is something that we're all dealing with in the workplace. AI is shown up fast and furious. People are a little uncertain, a lot uncertain. How do we make sure that there's space for growth and development? How do we make sure there's space for the experimentation that they need to be doing? If they're going to get it wrong, which inevitably we all will, it's also about that. And it's about making sure that the people on your team know that, this is expected and that they have the resources to do that. We want to develop that growth mindset as we move forward in volatile times and uncertain times. We want to make sure that we know that it's better to take chances and take action than to stay still and lie in bed and be in pain. It's just when you're in that space, it's hard to move sometimes, but if you don't move, it doesn't change. So this is what the message that you want to convey to the people that you're with, to the people that you lead, that change is going to happen. So why don't we become the drivers of it and do it in a smart way? Why don't we start getting ready for it and developing that growth mindset so that we know how we're going to take control of this. So part of that is developing your own resilience strategy. And within that is having your resilience goals. For some people, my resilience goals, part of that is going to the gym. Part of that is doing these LinkedIn lives. For you, it might be doing, a communication strategy for crisis. It might be developing a strategy for AI for your team. I like to talk a lot about becoming your own futurist, to do contingency planning and strategizing into the future, knowing your subject matter and thinking about those what ifs, if then. So it really is about thinking through what could go wrong, some risk mitigation given the uncertainty of the times, and having a plan. One of the psychologists who I love to talk about is Gabrielle Oettingen. She's out of NYU, and I think she just has this brilliant concept, and part of it is, I've mentioned this before, is I just love the acronym, which is WOOP, and it's Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. And what we can often go wrong is the fact that we think hope is a plan, and it's not. So when we actually know what we want to accomplish, when we know the obstacles that might get in the way, it makes us more resilient. First of all, we feel more in control, and my not so in a control freak will come out, and I know it will. So if I have a plan to manage it, then I'm much better off. And again, taking action, I think, is one of the best things we can do for our own well-being going forward and for the well-being of our work and for our professional lives, is to be, putting on that, taking on that growth mindset and really having a learner's mentality. I'm personally, as I said, I'm going to be doing an agentics class so I can learn how to create my own little agent and start doing automation, and have kind of dived into AI because I know this is where the future is going. But that might be different for you. And it's really about knowing what is it that you want to accomplish. And in that subject matter, what could potentially go wrong and how do you manage it if it does? And just being ready. It's a preparedness strategy. And I'm not saying spend a lot of time worrying about these things and obsessing over it. I'm just saying know your options, get ready for worst case scenarios, but really go forward with the mindset of a best case scenario, because honestly, I'm an optimist, and that is, I just think, a easier way to live, but I'm a realistic optimist, and I want to make sure that if something does go wrong, I'm going to be ready for it. So this is what we want to be thinking about and looking at, and then adjusting. Part of this is a plan. It's an iterative process. We don't know what's going to happen, But if we have a sense of where we want to go and what could go wrong, then we're able to adjust more rapidly. We're more resilient. A little bit of that bounce back is there a little more quickly, and that recovery time lessens because we have a strategy. We have a plan in terms of how we're going to address all of this. So, this is really like the underpinnings of creating a resilient culture. We want to get people thinking about their growth. We want to get people feeling comfortable sharing when things aren't going well. That psychological safety needs to be in place so that people are taking chances, that they're experimenting, that they're really looking forward in terms of what they want for their careers and how are they going to manage that, and how can we all be successful, more successful together. And that comes through open dialogue. You want to make sure that this is how your team operates, and you want to make sure that everyone knows it. And then there's also through one-to-ones. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of clients whose one-to-ones get pushed off over and over again because they're high performers and their bosses think that they don't need it, but everyone needs it. You want to be having those conversations. You want to make sure people have what they need so they can be more resilient. Resilience is easier. Everything is easier. I come from public health, so I think prevention is always the best strategy. And if we can catch things early on, it is so much easier to manage. So I think one-to-ones are critical, and people want that feedback. So make sure you're having them. And also, some people don't like to speak up. Some people aren't comfortable with that. So making sure that there's also an option for people who prefer anonymity so that people can share what they think, what they need, and do it in a way that feels comfortable to them. Again, the concept is having everyone show up as their best selves and produce and perform as the best selves, and just creating a culture where people really are just doing their best. And that comes from that open dialogue, from just encouraging people to really speak up when things are not working for them, and from you modeling that as a leader, as a manager and director. And again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of that peer support and collaboration. It's a lot harder now, because so many teams are remote, but there are options for that. But where possible, when possible, making sure that there's opportunities for people to connect and support one another in a very direct way. And again, I recommend that peer-to-peer coaching, the Marshall Goldsmith PDF. Just Google it, easy to find. And then another piece that I know gets overlooked because I've had a lot of clients tell me that they're not receiving this, which is recognition. We tend to belittle it sometimes, maybe because we didn't get it, but the research is there. If you look at Gallup's 25 years of 30 years plus of research, recognition is one of those things that people really want and need. And I can't tell you how many of my clients, particularly my younger clients, they really want that. And if somebody wants and needs that, it's such an easy thing to do. Why not give it to them? And to give it to them in a way that they want it, because not everybody wants it publicly. Some people most definitely want it publicly. Everybody is different, but making sure people feel recognized for the contribution they're making. We want that positive reward cycle going on. And speaking of rewards, we want to make sure that any rewards that for the work well done is commensurate with the work. So just being clear about the expectations, what people want and need, is just such a huge, huge factor, and one that we don't spend enough time thinking about or talking about. So that's really the general framework of creating a different definition of strength. That was my epiphany at the gym. Strength isn't about how heavy you lift. It's about showing up and lifting. It's about, knowing that where you were a few months ago, well, where you are now is so much better than where you were a few months ago, or where you were, in my case, 8 years ago. And knowing that we're making progress, and knowing that, we are really showing up as our best selves, even though that might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but in, whatever amount of time that is. that we have the support we need to recover fully, to really be our best, to contribute, and to create an atmosphere of work that really allows that to happen. So on that note, thank you for your time, for showing up here to be with me. If you have any questions, if I can support you in any way, if you need coaching, if you need training, or somebody to talk about what it's like to come back from some very difficult times, just reach out to me. I love to talk about this stuff. I try to keep it short for these LinkedIn Lives because I know how busy everyone is, and your time is valuable. And on that note, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Next week, I'm going to talk about executive communication and AI, how we use it to our advantage, and making sure we don't overuse it to our disadvantage. So I hope you can be there and sign up, and I would love to see you back. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.